let's look at how you can use AI to improve upon how you do research as a researcher with Avidnote. This will help you when you're reading, writing, researching, analyzing, and all of those other things that you do as a researcher. But before we jump into those specific tasks, first you need an account with Avidnote. Once you've registered, you can then log in, open up your projects view, create a project. In this case, I've already created a project that's called nuclear power, and I've already uploaded a document here. In your case, you would need to upload a document by clicking on this button or by clicking on this button here on the left side. And once you have then opened up the document, you then get this view where you have your documents on one side and the text that you are writing on the other side. So you can write text here, and then on the right side, you have what you're reading. And they're always side by side in Avidnote. You can take notes and tags, which is not the specific purpose of this video. So if you want to find out more about the core Avidnote functionalities, I would recommend you to watch some of our other content. However, if you want to use the AI functionality, what you will do is you will open up the AI tab here. And with this tab, you can choose any of the pre-select templates that are all specifically tailored for research purposes. So for example, you can generate a keyword for your literature study, you can analyze data, find research gaps. So for example, if you paste in a large body of text, it will then look for potential research gaps. I would suggest pasting in text, for example, from the beginning part of a research paper where the authors are describing the previous research that has been done in that field. And then if you paste in that text, the AI will analyze that and try to find potential gaps that you could then perhaps study yourself in your research. And of course, for all of these different templates, there is a limit on the number of words that you can put in at one time, which is around 1,500 words. So what you can do is, as I said before, you can sort of find keywords for literature study, but you can also analyze interviews. So if you paste in like a transcript of an interview, or if you want to generate research questions or generate like questions for a survey study, an interview study, you can do that as well. You can also write, of course, so it can provide you, for example, parts of your research papers, paste in text or give a description of your study, and it will then generate an abstract in a structured way. It can also generate like an introduction, literature review, and so forth. But of course, when it comes to using generative text, you always have to rewrite text, look at it critically, add in your own text, find proper sources. The same way you would basically tackle any research related task. You wouldn't just copy something and then use it. You would make it part of your research paper by, adding text to it, redacting text, rewriting stuff, adding in sources, and essentially taking part in the research writing process. But AI can sort of help you in that process. You can also rewrite text. So for example, if you have a text that you're not happy with, you want to rewrite it, it's specifically geared so it writes in an academic way. So if you want to polish your text, you can just paste it in and let the AI help you out to write it in a more academic fashion. It can also help you with reading. So, for example, if there's a complicated text that you don't understand, you can paste it in, and then the AI will try to simplify that. It can also provide like an opposite view. So, you just select the opposite view, you paste in some text, and then the AI will suggest the contrarian view in the academic space. And then we can also look at summarizing text, for example, or proofreading text. You can also translate things from one language to another language. If you have written a text and you want to get some suggestions on how to improve it, you click on proofread text and then it will try to do exactly that. And then you can look at some other things as well that I won't go into detail here. You can play around with them yourself. It can, for example, suggest like research conferences or future research direction or give an academic critique of a specific text. So in order to begin, let's just try it out. So let's say I have a study here. I want to find some keywords for a literature study. So I describe my study here, or I can paste in text. So let's say the study is about nuclear power. And I'm just writing as I would describing this to a human. So the study is about nuclear power. I am examining the perceptions of, say, people living in Europe regarding the use of nuclear power and of course spelling correctly. So, and if I put this in and I click search, Now it's going to try to basically generate questions for a literature study that I then can use. I can sort of copy that and use it in Google Scholar or PubMed or whatever sort of research database that I'm using in order to find my papers. And depending on how complicated the task is, it may take a few seconds, sometimes up to a minute or so, in order to generate a response. So now we got the response here. You can see the question that I just asked it, and then it gave me the answer. So here are some potential keywords that I can use in my study. For example, nuclear power and Europe and perceptions. And then it gives me a bunch of different queries that I can use, and I can copy these and then use them in my literature study. Now let's try a different prompt. So let's use, for example, I want to write a survey study, and I'm using the exact same description for my study, but now I selected suggest question for a survey study. Imagine you want to do like a questionnaire and you want to have some sort of inspiration for what type of questions should I add in my questionnaire. So in this case, the more detailed you are in your description, usually the better the response of the AI in terms of sort of the quality of the questions that it will give you. So I would say it's better to be more detailed than being less detailed. But for the purposes of this video, I've been very brief and just used like 1 or 2 sentences. So now the answer is here. As you can see, it gives me first some introductory questions like the name, the age, the occupation. And then because this is a questionnaire, you get a scale, right? Like a Likert scale from 1 to 5. How much do you trust the safety measures implemented for nuclear power plants? So immediately it understands that this is one of the questions that humans are concerned with when it comes to nuclear power. Even though I didn't mention anything about safety, because the AI has access to this large database of text, it can then understand or associate rather than understand, it can associate it with these other topics. So another question here, how much of a concern is the potential of a nuclear disaster to you and your community? How much do you support the use of nuclear power as a source of energy? And you get basically this scale, like a Likert scale. You can do the same thing for an interview study as an example. I'm using the exact same description, and I click search. Now it's going to focus more on sort of gearing the responses to give you like potential questions that you could use in an interview study. So imagine you're doing like a qualitative study, you're interviewing a bunch of people, and you want to understand their perceptions of nuclear power. And of course, it's a very contested issue. So some people will have very positive views of it, other people will have sort of more of a reserved or contrarian position. So in this case, it's going to give me the questions again, some introduction questions that I can use in the beginning, like the name, occupation, where they reside. Are you familiar with the use of nuclear power in Europe? That's a very relevant question, I would say, when you're doing an interview study, because then you can do like different cohorts, for example, people who are familiar with nuclear power, people who are not. And then, of course, you can see, did their responses change? Are the people who are more knowledgeable about nuclear, for example, more positive of it, or are they more negative? Then it gives you a bunch of questions here. What is your opinion on the use of nuclear power? How do you think the use of nuclear power affects the environment? So all of these questions have been designed to be sort of semi-structured, so you can create possible follow-up questions, which it will always also suggest. And then it's also been tailored to avoid leading questions, which you shouldn't ask as a researcher anyway. And then it concludes with some final questions. Would you be interested in participating in any follow-up interviews or surveys related to the study? So I would say these questions here look very relevant. I mean, these are questions, if I was doing a study of this nature, I would probably look into questions of this nature. So this saves you a lot of time when you're doing your research. You can sort of play around with this. And if you play around with the description, it's going to generate a completely new set of questions. And then you can also get it to write something. For example, let's say you want to write, either you choose like write anything. In that case, you can give it a description similar to other AI tools like ChatGPT, or you can give like a specific thing. So let's say I want an abstract and I describe my study, and then it's going to give me a structured abstract. Or let's choose, for example, a historic overview of a topic. So in this case, I'm studying this specific topic, right, about nuclear power. And let's just add in, for example, focus on developments in the recent decades as an example, just to make it more detailed. And I click search. And then I wanted to write a historical sort of overview of this topic, focusing on recent decades. And then the AI, because this sort of template that we just chose it requires sort of a lot of text to be written. That means that it takes a little bit more time in order to generate. So we need to have a little bit of patience. And it could be, depending on the prompt, sometimes anything from a few seconds up to sort of a minute or so, I would say, is the typical response times. While this is loading, I can just show you on the right side of the screen where you have the PDF that you're annotating. Here you can open up the annotation bar and you can see all of the different annotations that you've created in Avidnote. So for example, if I've created an annotation here, which is look into this for my conf paper, I'm writing a conference paper and I want to highlight this here, I can do that, and I create like a small post-it note. And I can highlight that. I can also change this and format this. So for example, if I want to make this green, and let's say I make the post-it notes green as well, I make it into a check mark, then I can get that in that specific format. I can also sort of redact text if I want to do that, and sort of create a redaction and sort of play around with this. And if I click on my note, it will jump to that specific page. So it's a much easier way of sort of taking notes on papers. So now our prompt here is finished. And as you can see, the question comes up, the question that we asked, and then it wrote a introduction, a historical overview of nuclear power in Europe. Talks about, it dates back to about 1950s, talks about Russia, and and then it talks about the Chernobyl disaster of 1986. And this is a very good sort of overview. And what you can do is you can use things that are useful from it, and then basically find proper sources for it, expand upon those parts, or you can use this as a way to sort of dig deeper. So, for example, it mentions something specific, like the survey here, where it mentioned Chernobyl, and you're like, okay, that's pretty interesting. And then you can go into Google Scholar or whatever database you're using, and you can find more about that specific topic. Or if you're already familiar with the topic and you have a domain knowledge of it, you can take some text, but then you obviously need to rewrite that text. You can't take the text as your own without properly rewriting, adding, retracting, doing the same thing you would do when you're reading another paper, and then providing proper sources for where you can find like an authoritative sort of source for those statements. So that's a perfect example how you can do that. You can then, in Avidnote, you can click copy answer, and you can copy this, you can paste it into Word, or you can paste it into your editor here. So if I want to add, for example, a new note, I can create a note here, historic overview, and then I'm going to paste it in here. So I'm pasting in the text that I got from the AI. I save that, and now that's been saved here. So for my own sort of purposes, I can then go back to this later on. And if I go back to the first page, you can see it's been created here. And inside the Avidnote view here, you can search for keywords and it will find those keywords. Now, in this case, there's only one document here, but you can imagine you would have like 100 documents. If you search for your note, it would find that specific note. The same thing with the documents, and you can use tags to sort of organize everything. If we go back to the view here with the AI, let's use this one more time to find something when you're writing. For example, you've written a text and then you're not really happy with your text, or you want to have some suggestions on how you can improve it. You can then take that text that you've written. So for example, let's just take some random text here. Let's just copy this as an example, right? Let's just copy this text here. Let's copy the whole thing so we get a little bit more text. And let's, or wait, the formatting gets a little bit off because it's taken from a specific PDF. Let's take this text here instead. We'll paste this in here. And what I will do is I will create some mistakes in it, right? Just to show that it's going to fix these issues. So I'm just going to keep on doing like a couple of mistakes here and there. And basically see how it reacts, right? So now as you can see, I've removed a couple of words here and there, so the grammar is all messed up and stuff. And I wanted to proofread this text. So I'm going to click search, and now it should proofread this text and give me a new sort of document that has been revised, where it provides sort of a lot of new details to this specific thing that we're looking at now. So this text in specific. If we wait for a few seconds here, it should then provide us with that new prompt where we have all of the new text generated. And I should mention one more thing here, that all of the AI searches that you make here, they will be saved. So you can delete them anytime by just clicking on the little X button. And when you click on it, it will be removed. If you click on clear answers, it will remove all of the different prompts that you've put in. Okay, so now we have our new text here. So you can see the AI has revised it. So this is the new version that the AI suggested. And you can see it fixed, for example, nuclear power here that I spelled incorrectly, right? And then it also gave it's been prompted to explain all of the different corrections that it has made. So in this case, it's explaining what it did. So you can yourself see if it's reasonable or not, and then remove or whatever. So it removed this extra word, it fixed capitalization errors, it changed build to started building, it did all of these different changes here. And then it provides some extra suggestions that you could do when you're writing the academic text. In this case, for example, it says, this text provides a brief overview of nuclear power in Europe and its public opinion. However, it could be useful to include more detailed information about the current status of nuclear power use in European countries. Additionally, the study could benefit from including the opinions of experts and policymakers regarding nuclear power. And then, yeah, it gives a whole suggestions on things that you could add on for your own research. Yeah, so that's basically it. You can use these different prompts to do all sorts of things. You can even analyze data. So if you have data in text form, you can copy it and paste it in, and then the AI is going to suggest correlations and try to find correlations. The same thing with if you have like a transcript of an interview, you can do that as well. So in order to use it, you can use it on the free version. In the free version, you have up to 10 prompts that you can use. You would then need to upgrade if you want to use it unlimited, like an unlimited use. You just click upgrade plan and then choose the plan that you want to use.